before we start speaking about MySQL Shell, which is a tool for seamlessly for developers and administrators, so it's a tool which in a cloud native environment can really change the rules of the game, and we'll see why. A few words about myself. So my name is Vittorio, and I was a MySQL user from 2006. Who in this room use MySQL? Hands up, don't be shy. 1, 2. I wonder what all the others are doing, but okay, I hope different functions. So I was a MySQL user since 2006, and then I joined Oracle in 2017, and from a MySQL user, thanks to the constant interaction with other MySQL users, I became a bit more knowledgeable than I was, but just a bit. So originally I'm from Italy, so not a very different place from Israel. That's why I love coming here all the time. I actually live in Poland now, so a bit of a different place for sure, way colder. Okay, this is what we are gonna talk about. A few words about how is MySQL doing now, and an overview of the shell, and we'll focus on the two major areas which Shell delivers. So, improvements for development with the document store APIs, and improvement for HA. Let's go, let's get this started. So, MySQL is the #1 open source database in the world, and for those of you who didn't have contact with MySQL for some years, yes, still the #1 open source database, regardless of what you may hear around, and it's used by all of the guys which you see on the slides. So it's used in the new internet market, as well in more of a traditional business with guys like Siemens, Cisco, so Dell, people which have been around for quite a while. Again, some facts. Is the most popular open source database, say up to what the website DB Engine says, and by 2022, since there is a prognosis of growing of data by 70%, and since the majority of new projects will be developed on open source databases, well, that's where MySQL already fits and will fit even more, hopefully. Then, to answer to a question which I get very often, that didn't Oracle kill MySQL in the last 10 years? No, it's actually improving a lot, as you can see, because from MySQL 5.7 and even with versions before, there was improvement in performance, security functionalities, a more elastic and agile system of provisioning HA, as we will discuss for what concerns the MySQL shell. And this all culminates with MySQL 8, where we actually got even more of this, so more performance, more functionalities for developers, for DBAs, and it was actually a very important release for building the MySQL of the future. So more automation and more functionalities that can be taken and used. So if MySQL used to be easy in the past, it's becoming, while becoming enterprise ready, it's becoming even easier. Then it's available in two versions, community and enterprise. What about and then just to say that if MySQL was easier before, it's now becoming even easier. Let's speak about MySQL Shell. Who knows what MySQL Shell is? command line tool, very good answer, but which kind of command line tool? Because in the end there was a MySQL command line client, so saying it's a command line tool, the response from the room could be, yeah, well, another one? Do I need it? So let's speak about it. MySQL Shell, it's a command line tool, but it's multi-language. So alongside with the standard MySQL client, you will get interfaces in Python and JavaScript, and a questionnaire which I throw to the room at this point is, who loves JavaScript? Who loves Python? Okay, so all the rest of you are working in different functions, definitely. So yeah, it's an interactive command line tool which provides multi-language interface, and it's available in 2 versions, 1.0, which is for MySQL up to 5.7, and surprise, surprise, 8.0, which is for MySQL 8 and above. So what was the goal of MySQL Shell? The goal of MySQL Shell, it was to become a natural interface for DevOps. So it had to be intuitive, it had to be flexible, it had to be scriptable. So that's why you need multi-language interface. And that's what it does. It provides APIs for a series of things, which we'll see. When I say APIs, those are JavaScript, Python APIs, or commands which are scriptable. Then let's not confuse with REST API, which are yet to come, maybe at a certain point. So this is what the MySQL Shell is. You get a JavaScript, a Python, and an SQL interface, and what does it do? It can help you manage the MySQL document store if you have heard about it, and you will hear, otherwise you will hear about it in a few slides. It helps you set up the availability, and it brings a very rich toolbox for while it brings a lot of APIs for developers, it brings a rich toolbox for DBAs. Does anyone remember MySQL utilities? So MySQL utilities, for all the rest of you, were a set of scripts delivered together with MySQL and discontinued at a certain point, but some of them are still really useful and some of them are being progressively migrated into MySQL Shell. So what does it do? Multi-language support, JavaScript, Python, and SQL. So they are both interactive and scriptable for batch operations to be integrated into scripts, whatever. Then, yes, there is, as I said, support for JavaScript and Python, and you get an example of the syntax. So you start the MySQL Shell with the py or JS option, and you can, with the E option, as it was used into the MySQL client we have always used, you can enter a script. And this is actually a very good way to make the MySQL system to digest code. Then session. There are session variables like the show status. So actually anything is about the session, which was about the MySQL session into the MySQL command line client, it has a dedicated session global variable into both of the languages available. Then, yeah, and this is kind of an example for connections. So you can actually make it digest a JavaScript file that does things, and there's the way. So this was also the answer to one of the things which I was getting questioned very often. Is MySQL able to process code? Here is the answer. Then, yeah, this is Another usage for the session variable, you can use the get session in JavaScript. Sorry, I am for the Python lovers, I have used JavaScript all over my presentation because, well, with Python I still have troubles, for example, with blank spaces. So one blank, for the ones you are not used to Python, it's kind of positional, so one blank space more and your script doesn't work anymore. Again, the shell variable. So the shell variable allows the access to shell features. So like URI parsing, logging, pager API, password manager. Like to connect, it's enough to write shell connect and the connection string, user, host, port. Easy stuff. Util object. So the util is where the MySQL utilities are getting transferred to. A new thing, well, for example, a new utility, which was two new utilities, which were recently published, were the ones where you can check the server for upgrade to version 8 if it complies with all the requirements. And one of my favorite ones is the one where you give it a JSON and it imports it directly into a table as a JSON, not as some random text formats. Then API command integration. Yeah, so this is basically a usage which you can use with the shell, giving object name, method name. So there's a usage where you apify, for example, the usage of the utility JSON, import JSON. And you can call it from any script. So this would be something a DBA would really love potentially. Again, this is a nice to have. It can be useful when I have 50 windows opened, 50 shells opened, a lot of them. So this is another thing DBA is gonna love, is the possibility to customize in the command prompt, not only on the fly, but also from a prompt file. So I can get more context information about the machine I am connecting to not to have to remember or consult with Excel sheets. Then, so we are getting more into security. Credential managers. So it's possible to use login paths. It's possible to use keychains from macOS. It's possible to use the Windows credential managers. It's possible to use the utility shell store credential in order to pass the credentials to any storage, any credentials backend which I may define by myself. And so you can write your own password store backend and you can define your own. And so this gives a help, and it is possible also to automatically save the password on that host, not to have to retype it again, which is personally something I never do, because you never know while you are on break who access your machine. But I may be me, I am a bit paranoid. Normally, it's something several users wished. So, again, history. This is an obvious to have, but still it's there. So it's possible to navigate, it's possible to activate the history navigation with the arrows, arrow up and arrow down. Furthermore, it's possible to search through the history by keywords, by entering a portion of a word, and sensitive commands which contain passwords and these kind of things are not saved in the history. Then, the documentation. So there is obviously a built-in help which provides a very good very good instructions in case we do not remember some commands. Believe me, I am a very heavy user of the help command because I never remember syntax unless I use a command more than daily. So then the shell meets continuous automation. This is something which can interest both developers and DBA, because thanks to all of the scripting capabilities which we have discussed about, it is possible to automate MySQL deployments with tools like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, and so on. So this is where the shell, so the MySQL, meets heavily the cloud native world, because you can define really your own deployment, your own whatever, thanks to the APIs which are provided. And there are two main categories of APIs which are provided. One of those is the XDEV API. So this is something which has been embedded in MySQL Shell and in all of the connectors to allow the SQL word and the NoSQL word to come together. How does it work? So there was this need of having both of the words together to use only one product and to access the same JSON data in both ways, relational and non-relational. And there is a bunch of good reason to do that, and me myself, I have done a bunch of seminars where I explain all of that reasons. So basically, because of all of that reasons, all of the good reasons to access the same JSON data in two different ways, MySQL Document Store came to life, and basically it's a JSON data type with a layer of APIs to allow the dual access I was speaking about. This came to life in MySQL 8.0, and the API which allows this access is called XDEV API, and as I said, it's embedded in MySQL Shell and in all the connectors. At an architectural level, the document store looks like this. So I have a JSON collection, which at the end of the day, it's an InnoDB table. I can access it with CRUD operations or SQL operations, and they can eventually convert the fields, and they can search the fields with JSON path, eventually convert on the fly some of that fields to a table. There is a bunch of JSON functions available in the SQL syntax. So one of those reasons is that one could access for read and writes in a CRUD fashion, and for more complex analytics and more complex queries in a SQL fashion. So yeah, at the bottom of this, as I said, there is the XDEV API, which allows us to create collections, import the JSON, and manage our data in a way, and manage our JSON data in a dual way, but also it allows us to access our SQL data via CRUD operations for the most basic. Insert, update, delete, create. And this is a grasp of the thing which you can do with the XDEV API. So there are operations to be done on collections, on tables. There are session operations. Yeah, because you get, having it built on the MySQL storage engine, you get transactionality by default. And then you can do operations on schemas. Like if the schema is a relational schema or a non-relational schema, which may sound as a blasphemy, but in the end, a key value, sorry, for me, it's a schema. A simple one, but still. Then, following up on this, the second API which is available, it's more DBA oriented, it's the admin API. And this is what allows to create highly available MySQL setups in 7 minutes if you type slow. So the idea was to create a single high availability product which replies to two needs, having automatic failover and automatic conflict resolution, which was, for those of you who are not MySQL users, this was the main two concerns of people which were having high availability using replication. I see one person in the audience going, yes, I know what you are talking about. So yeah, this was the idea behind it. And a replication mechanism to do that came out, which was in-house developed by our developers. It's called group replication. So the idea is simple, the implementation is more complex, but the idea is what I have told you. And the group replication, the thing about group replication is that you could set it manually on a set of servers, server by server, as you do with normal replication, but this, being this a more complex implementation than replication, it required slightly more configuration options. Not multiplied by 2, but multiplied by 3 at least, because group replication runs for voting reasons in case of failover on an uneven number of servers. So what's the deal about this? I get something better but more complex to set up? Well, that was not going to be liked by the users and not even by us who would have to work with that daily. So in reality, anything which is configuration, anything which is repeatable is scriptable. So we have created the XDev API, whose task is to automate group replication high availability setup. So this becomes the heart of InnoDB cluster. Well, the router, it's an external component, an external middleware which requires one command to be set up to make the cluster transparent. Then the group replication is the heart, while all of the replication happens and when the data consistency is maintained. And the shell is the place where you set all of these up in. If you have 3 servers, it's 6 commands. 3 to set up the replication itself, 3 to create a cluster. And all of this is done by an API which is provided, which is called admin API for obvious reasons. So yeah, it does what I said: configuration, provisioning, orchestration, so you can add and remove instances with one command. And news of some months ago, you can deploy an empty instance and you can transfer all of the content from the existing replication setup. Again, this is available in JavaScript and Python. And it has some interesting options apart of the ones which I've told you. Cluster, so it already creates, when you connect to the shell with the option cluster, it already creates a cluster option variable, so you can already get the cluster status without having to declare a global variable. Then it has the redirect primary option, which sends you automatically to the primary server if you are not connecting to it, and as well redirect secondary, which sends you to a secondary server. So primary is the place where you read and write. Secondary is the place where you do read-only operations. You can have also a multi-primary setup. So, and this is to deploy and manage the cluster. You do, yeah, those were the commands I was speaking about. At least three times configure instance for every instance, then create cluster, then you add other 2 instances, 6 commands, cluster is ready. There are more commands like remove instance, rejoin instance. So it gives a full set, a full toolbox to manage high availability setups. Yeah, again, sandboxes. Oh yeah, If you want to play with the high availability setup of with MySQL machine on a local machine, you do not need anymore to go into the complexity of writing a configuration file and then firing up multiple machines with the MySQL multi command. But with the shell, you get sandboxes, so you can deploy as many sandboxes as you want, which will come pre-configured, also with the clustering options. So this was very easy. I personally use that a lot when I have to do demos. I fire sandbox and it behaves like a real MySQL on a local machine. And this is something, in my opinion, developers would end up liking, because it really gives you as many instances as you need on a local environment very quickly. On the other hand, if you need to do more production-like testing, this mechanism removes all the complexity due to the network. So because it's on a local network, but it's on a local host. But for testing things other than infrastructure, this is very handy. So, in summary, what do I want you to remember about MySQL Shell? So, that is a simple tool which provides a multi-language interface and powerful tools which will allow both developers and admins to do their tasks, having to remember less stuff and using only one tool. And actually, more functionalities are going to be added in the MySQL Shell, which, if you want to know which ones are going to be added, come to the booth, because they are not there yet and this video is getting recorded. Thanks a lot.